We will be just starting now, and I will start with a short presentation, with a short introduction. I'm Franca Carassai, Associate at Thornton Education Trust, and also Project Urban Designer at Levitt Bernstein, and I will be chairing today's webinar, TED Dialogue of this year. For those unfamiliar with TED, we are a small charity committed to inspire children and young people to engage with the built environment. And this year, we dedicated these webinars to the Inspire Future Generation Awards winners to give them the opportunity to present their projects and practices that that received awards from the last year, so 2025. Today's topic is about from evidence to action, always putting children and young people at the center of place. And we will be listening from different professionals and from different sectors on how they translate children and young people engagement processes into practice, and if that is something that can be adaptable and is they have opportunities to monitor their processes as well. And the projects that today we are featuring range from different, from co-design methodologies to child-friendly strategies. So today's we are joined by Nia Evans, Operations Manager, and Malcolm Hamilton, Creative Director at Play Disrupt, James Cox, Senior Development Manager at Developer Town, and Bonnie Kwok, Leader of the Greater Cambridge Youth Engagement Service. So to start and kick off this session, we will start with Play Disrupt and their research project in English, if that's well pronounced. English Building is a digital mapping tool that combines young people's lived experience with organizational data to make local evidence more accessible and actionable in planning. So Nia and Malcolm, I'm hand over to you now, and you can explain more about your practice and your projects.
Great, thanks so much. It's really exciting to be here today. Thank you to TET for inviting us. So I'm Nia and this is Malcolm.
Hello.
We're from an organisation called Play Disrupt. We're a creative engagement studio based in Bristol, but we work across the UK and we use play-based approaches to engage people and increase participation in areas such as housing, academia and health. And we advocate for play for people of all ages. It's got so many amazing benefits for all of us, and it's great in its own right.
And so today we're here to talk about Public Map, which is a research project, Arts Humanities Research Council research project, which is led by Cambridge University with Cardiff and Wrexham and Bangor as well, and about our role within that as co-investigators, where we've been developing a method called symbology, which is what you can see here. And this was about developing symbols with young people. Public Map as itself, you can look that up and I'm sure the links will be shared later on. But that's like a big public map project where it holds all kinds of data, lots and lots of different health data and crime index data and all kinds of different data. And it's pairing that with local community data like the frog walks that people do to kind of look after where the frogs are crossing the road and what young people think of this certain place and the way that the old railway moves like this. So all of this kind of community data linked with the big data, and it's attached to the Future Generations Act. It started on Anglesey or Ynys Môn. And so it's attached to Future Generations Act of Wales. It's very much about elevating young people's voices, and it's about kind of connecting our deep connection with place and using that to inform the decisions that are made through planning. There's lots and lots of different ways into it, lots of different approaches, and symbology has become one of those ways into it.
We had a really lovely kind of open invitation within this project around what symbology could look like. And we knew we wanted to work with groups of children who might not usually be involved in the consultation process. So we worked with a range of groups, including Girl Guides. We worked with Anglesey Young Carers groups. We did drop-ins at various youth clubs as well across Anglesey. So we had a really kind of flexible approach that allowed us to reach a lot of different people. And we did that through a sort of iterative process that was creative, experience-based. We used kind of theatrical methods and we made sure that it was always centering what the young people wanted to do. And we were looking at these central questions of essentially, what do you want to say about where you live? And then how do you want to say it? How do you want that to be represented in a creative way?
So it was really looking at the intangible. So we started off with this very loose parts, hands-on kind of ways of doing it. So we often work with loose parts. So this is our mandala of Innis Mon. So it was lots and lots of different bits and bobs. And we just asked young people to think, first of all, about where they play. So they were just making really simple 2D model maps of where they play. And then as we started to gather those together in groups, we would say, what are the common factors between this? For instance, nature, for instance, calm places, for instance, places where you'd make friends. And from that began to then surface some of the themes that we might make symbols about. So the things that kind of emanate from a place, the things that kind of float above them. And we started to then, after that, start to look at how those things might move and animate, essentially. So we started to, as you can see here, take from this very sort of simple kind of like model making stuff. And this was done, we worked with Esquilabont, which was an additional needs school on the island, which again taught us all kinds of different ways of communicating and how different children communicated. So we would take that, and then over periods of time, we started to then puppet that and kind of move it, kind of try it in different ways, and then film that. And then we would remove the background so that it might be able to be used on a map. But as we started to work with them, they started to teach us so much more, obviously, about what they were after. And we went into one particular youth club, and we were trying to get people to do this. And we were talking to this young man, and we said, "Oh, look, can you come and make us a symbol like this and put it in this box and do that?" And he said, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's not the way I would do animation." And we said, "Well, how would you animate?" And he said, "Oh, I would do this." And he basically started doing stuff on his phone like that. And what he came up with was this. And it was just like, whoa, how did you do that? That's beautiful. And he showed us, and it was using a stop frame animation app called Flipperclip. And from there, it was like, okay, hang on, this is a very different way to do this. And he started to teach us. So that became a fundamental kind of milestone in the shift of the journey.
Yeah, Flipperclip became something that we used across lots of the workshops after that. So it was really kind of responding to what young people wanted to do. And also we kind of kept this hybrid approach of having some really hands-on offers through the loose parts, as well as the digital, looking at how we kind of represent our experience of a place. And it also kind of offered an experience that could be quite scrappy and quite silly and quite funny. And people made, this is one of my favourite ones. So this was a symbol representing danger. So we weren't really expecting this, but young people started actually placing themselves within the symbols. So using their own kind of stop motion animation, using their own pictures, and then also drawing from nature. So there's so much beautiful nature in Anglesey. And we ran a series of workshops actually by the beach, where schools were coming to where we were. So it was really using what was around us as well, and actually putting place directly into the map, which was a lovely part of it.
It became really important to think about when symbols are usually on maps, they're usually done in a kind of universal way, because that makes sense, because that's what they're trying to tell. But actually we started to end up subverting what that was, and actually it became more of a way in order to be able to show how young people feel about a place. And it was about kind of taking all the affordances, all that's possible within the digital world, and kind of mixing that with your experience of place. The thing is about this, what we've learned from it as well, is because it's interesting, because it's fun, because the kids like doing it, then they get more involved in it. And because they get more involved in it and they say more about it, it gives us much more evidence about the way that they play and what they want to do. And it's very much like, as Neil was saying, it's silly and it's scrappy, but it's very much of them. It's like their way to communicate, which was what, really kind of pleasing from that kind of process.
In terms of this, this was part of this larger research project. So we also used worksheets at certain stages to kind of unpick what different decisions that young people made about the colours and the shapes and how they represented things, what those meant, as well as interesting things around language and what language they chose to express in, whether it was English or Welsh. And then we were kind of capturing those impacts of those methods about how they communicated about place. And this did have some immediate impacts in terms of the place efficiency assessments that were going on. So we actually invited lots of young people to
Can you just
create
talk me
models
through the map that you've made?
to create models of where they like to play or spend time. And then from that, we were kind of building up a picture of what was the play offer in Anglesey like. And then that could feed directly into the place efficiency assessment that Anglesey Council was doing at the time.
It also fed into, so lots of, obviously, as this was a big area C program, you know, then there was lots of other research kind of going around it, and research on research. So there was a whole process that took place looking at the well-being effects on young people of taking a trauma-informed outdoor creative approach to talking about place, and the findings that came from that. And then in time, this process, and particularly the bit we're about to show you now, which is a kind of way of story mapping that came out of it, will capture impacts of place for decision makings in exciting ways. This again was another moment of iteration that was a milestone where one young man just didn't want to. He didn't want to make symbols. He wasn't feeling up to it. So I said, well, look, can you just take other kids' symbols and can you just show us how you just make a little story of this place? And this is what it did. This is Rodri. Oops, no, that's somebody else.
Can you just talk me through the map that you've made?
So in Holyhead, I've done the lighthouse, and I've done like a burger for McDonald's in it, and I've done like the zip line. And in Llangefni, I've done Plas Arthur was the swimming pool and the footy pitch, and I've done Menai Bridge. And I've done like Newborough, I've done like jellyfish and crabs, and I've done the trees.
And how might you use this? If you'd made this, who would this be helpful for?
To see like what are the activities. If someone's new coming to Anglesey and they see a footy pitch in Llangefni, they could like go there. Great. If they don't know.
And what's different about doing this with animations to another map?
Because it's like fun, animating stuff. It shows people like what they're doing, like the crabs snipping their claws.
Yeah. So it's kind of got life to it.
Yeah.
And so now, as we move forward, which probably sort of come to an ordered end now, we're really thinking about in this next stage. So this was in stage 1. It's now got another 2 years, and so we're working now, and we're expanding out. So we're going to be working in Cambridge with this. We're going to be working in Cardiff with this, and in Wrexham. And this is attached to urban rooms in those places as well. So it's really thinking about how do we represent the feelings that emanate from a place with moving image. And in a little test run, this came up, which is where we started to, instead of playing with it just on maps, we started to kind of play with it on kind of Google Earth images, if you like. Like this is an adventure playground, and girls were playing the piano, and it was kind of thinking, how do they represent the music that emanates from an adventure playground? And that's taking us into the next stage. So
yeah, sort of using this story mapping to essentially capture the impacts of a place, and then being able to feed that to decision makers in a kind of exciting way. And then in its next phase, we're really looking at how do we use this capability of moving image to tell stories of change and tie into the kind of green transitions and that Future Generations Act.
Yep. Yeah. And that's us. There we go. Hopefully it didn't take too long.
No, that was perfect timing. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. As I was saying at the beginning, we will leave questions for the end of the session. So now it's over to James Cox. He's Senior Development Manager at Town, a purpose-led development company founded in 2014, and with aiming at creating homes and neighborhoods that improve quality of life. And so now, James, over to you.
Amazing, thanks. That was really cool. Thanks, Nia and Malcolm. That was really interesting to see. And as a geographer, big fan of mapping and different ways of doing it. So that was great. So I'm going to talk about something slightly different. I'm going to talk about our experience in Cambridge working on a project called Hartree, which you can kind of see in the back here, and thinking about children and young people in development. So my kind of experience of working on that through my career onto this project, and then later onto our kind of new impact framework that we've been developing at Town. So for those of you that don't know, probably everyone, we're a small housing developer based kind of nationwide across the UK, working at different scales, from kind of big settlement extensions like I'm going to be talking through, to town centre regeneration, and then at kind of a neighbourhood level, and we work in different ways in doing so. So I start with why this was interesting to us and why we're interested in children in the built environment. This was like the classic playground that you often see across the country, of some colourful but like not very entertaining toy in a playground with a fence around it, miles away from anything. And when I first started my career, I worked for a planning consultancy. Came out of university kind of like full of ideas, and then was asked to prepare a children and young people strategy for like a big urban extension of I think it was like 6,000 homes or something. And I thought this was kind of like, oh, this is quite exciting, a bit different to usual. It was needed because it was needed to discharge a planning condition on this kind of outline planning application. And my line manager at the time was like, no, you just need to write this simple strategy. You need to talk about leaps, neeps, and laps, which are like the different types of playgrounds. It needs to be so light on the detail, just has to tick the kind of policy box and then discharge the condition. And I kind of went from being quite excited about this opportunity to do something slightly different in my life as a planning consultant, into kind of realizing that it wasn't as exciting as maybe I thought this career was going to be. But what really struck me is there was kind of a lack of any thought about young people being involved in this, their own children and young people strategy, any thought about what it might actually feel like to grow up on this big kind of car dependent urban extension, how they have independence, what people might want in the first place. And yeah, wasn't in that job for too long. And so began to think after, kind of, you know, the issue wasn't necessarily that strategy, you know, that was had to tick a box on a big outline planning application in a kind of big planning system. It was actually like quite a lot of the conversation around young people and children in the built environment was as extensive as neeps, leaps, and laps. So it was all about kind of hitting a certain amount of play space or safeguarding, or is that playground 200 meters from the nearest house or further because it's going to be noisy, rather than how children kind of use, or how children are users of the neighborhoods. And so there was no questions around whether children can move independently. Would teenagers be comfortable in these spaces? Do the streets support spaces where people kind of want to have a social life? Whether children want to be involved, kind of, etc. And this thinking was quite helpful later on when working for town with Landsec UNI for Cambridge City Council and Anglian Water. We were working on a 48-hectare site in the northeast Cambridge across. So we were proposing 5,600 homes on this site, really quite a high density development. In the meantime, we'd met someone called Tim Gill, who's a researcher and author on child-friendly cities, and kind of met him through conferences, and we were working with him a little bit. And there was a shared vision and ambition to move beyond these leaps and laps into embedding child-friendly placemaking into the scheme, into this kind of big neighbourhood that was coming forward, but also into the governance of it and in the engagement as well. And for us as developers on this, it was actually around making a high density urban neighbourhood an attractive place, a livable place for families, which was going to be something different in Cambridge. So it was important from us in another perspective as well. So we worked in different ways, and this photo on the left is from some of the engagement we did at a nearby private primary school, which was fun. We looked at the Convention of Rights for Children. UNICEF got a good guide on child-friendly cities. Tim's book, The Urban Playground, which is really good. And we worked with Make Space for Girls as well. We came up with a kind of a strategy, which I'll talk to in a second, but we tested it on the master plan, so the streets and spaces and the housing. We engaged on it with young people, students at the university and Girl Guides as well. And then we came up with a checklist for any future detailed, it's a bit planning-y, but any future detailed planning application was going to have to submit a child-friendly design checklist and check off whether they must have done something, whether they should have done something, or whether maybe they would have done something. I won't talk through the kind of table on the right, but that was on the left, but that was kind of the nuts and bolts of it really, as we were thinking about what are the spatial components that make up a development, so the streets and routes, the public spaces and the kind of housing, as this was a housing scheme, and then what did they have to do across key themes that we'd identified that were important for children. So play, safety, inclusivity, active mobility, and access to nature. So it's about play being throughout the neighbourhood rather than one of these fenced playgrounds that we've all seen, how it's informal and incidental and kind of woven throughout the scheme. The importance of independent movement. So when I was kind of growing up, we just went out and played after school, or we got ourselves to school and back, and you come back for dinner and you go back out again. But how that's really important in a child's development, and what needs to happen for that. We need to have a connected movement network. You need to have lower traffic neighbourhoods. It needs to be safe. Moving on, the safe and sociable streets, how they're comfortable places to be in for people to kind of play. Having public spaces that are for different ages. We had 48 hectares and about 22 hectares of open space. So having across that extensive master plan, having spaces that were appropriate for different ages, different genders, abilities, including kind of teenagers and others, and the importance of nature in everyday life. And what we realised in that strategy, and this is kind of one of the CGIs of the scheme on the left, is actually this wasn't really anything different from what makes up a good place in the first place. And we didn't necessarily need to set out a kind of wasn't necessarily as groundbreaking as maybe we thought. Actually, it was just about creating really good walkable neighbourhoods, having safe and sociable streets, reducing traffic, opportunities for informal play, everyday interaction, and making sure that people, children, old people, could move around as they kind of as they needed to. So that was on Hartree, and what we've done since then is to think about how do we ensure similar principles run through the other schemes that we've got at town. So we've set up an impact framework, and part of that is around, well, there's 3 different priorities. There's our individual well-being, community well-being, planetary well-being. And this framework is now kind of shaping how we assess sites and how we define the ambition for those sites, to set targets through planning, design, and delivery, to guide key decisions, how we engage with people, and then evaluate back once we've completed. And I think key to this particular section is the kind of freedom for young and old, and so it's something that we're carrying through on other schemes. And this is how we're doing that. So in Northstowe, where we're working with 2 co-design communities in one scheme, we're working with their future residents to shape the layout and shared spaces. Westwick Row, which is we're working with the Crown Estate, picture on the left. We've moved the parking to the edge to prioritise shared streets and landscape spaces, public and private. And then Marmalade Lane, which is our kind of first built scheme, came pre the framework and pre Hartree, but has similar lessons as well. So reflecting on this, we think children are one of the best tests for whether a neighbourhood works. Simple as that. Child-friendly design is as good as any ordinary kind of urbanism. It's just what makes a good place. What we're trying to do is to move away from principles and into embedding this into kind of how we work and how we work more generally across other projects, and how actually it's not really a niche exercise. It's just working with children and understanding how it needs to work for them is a about creating places that genuinely support everyday life for all.
Thank you so much. That was super interesting, and it's good to see the design frameworks, child-friendly strategies that can work and that people can adapt as well in other practices. And I think that is something that you two, like you and this Play Disrupt, touch as well. There is a simple language, and that's translate that everyone can be involved. So it's not just when we think about children and young people, it's about everyone in the end. It's not just targeting one focus group. So thanks so much, both. Bonnie, now we are handing over to you, and Bonnie has over 25 years of qualification experience in architecture, town planning, and urban design. She leads the Greater Cambridge Youth Engagement Service that aims to ensure that children and young people have genuine input into town planning and urban design processes at both strategic and delivery stages. So, Bonnie, if you want to start.
Thank you. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Thornton Education Trust for inviting me to speak today. I'm Dr. Bonnie Kwok, and I lead the Greater Cambridge Youth Engagement Service. Yes, our mission is simple: to ensure children and young people have genuine voice in shaping the places where they live, learn, and play. Today, I'll share our approach, the policy context, and a case study from the North Cambridge Design Code. So a little bit about me. I lead the Youth Engagement Service, and this is strongly related to my firm belief that children's lived experience is a form of evidence. And when we take it seriously, planning outcomes improve for everyone. So here are the 5 points that I want to cover today. A little bit about YES. So YES delivers a wide range of award-winning services, from design workshops and public art sessions to careers advice and summer work experience programs. These activities help children build confidence, skills, and a sense of agency in shaping the environment. And I'm very lucky to have my trusted team supporting me, and they are Tom Davis, Maxine Ross, Lillian Botan, and Brooke Moore. They all work in the planning department, and through matrix management, they all come together when there's a need to run a YES workshop or YES training. So we are a very well-resourced team. You can see that we've won many awards over the years, including the prestigious Thornton Education Trust Awards, but also the RTPI Best Local Authority Award, the national category, and the YES team have played a key part in it. So Greater Cambridgeshire Planning is the strategic local planning authority for South Kempston City. And here you can see it's quite a large area. This map shows the breadth of our engagement from primary school to secondary schools across the country. We work where children are, and we make engagement accessible and relevant. From Plymouth to Newcastle, we have provided numerous youth engagement seminars, workshops, and training. So our services are not just limited to Greater Cambridge. We support developers and other local planning authorities nationally. This is the Greater Cambridge Youth Engagement Framework. And when we assess a planning application, the larger applications, we use this framework for all planning applications across Greater Cambridge. It's originally developed as part of my PhD at Oxford Brookes University and updated in 2023 following COVID. It ensures that our work is structured, inclusive, and meaningful. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Einstein Ladder of Participation, 69, but it's still very relevant today. And what we want to do is making sure that all the work we do achieve the very top rung, which is about co-designing with children rather than information dissemination. So this is a bit of context for youth engagement, just as a little reminder, but also the Cambridge context. So there's obviously the UN strategy, but also the Brundtland report. Locally, we have the Statement of Community Involvement, which explicitly recognizes the importance of youth engagement From a developer's point of view, it's also benefiting the work in terms of CSR, corporate social responsibility, ESG, environmental social governance, leading to better planning outcomes. So, case for Cambridge. Greater Cambridge is experiencing significant growth, and I think that's evident in the speakers today. All have something to do with Cambridge, which is fantastic. From water scarcity to transport infrastructure and affordable housing, youth engagement really helps to ensure that the growth is not only sustainable, but also socially grounded and reflecting the needs of the future generations. So this is a really important document. It's called the Greater Cambridge Statement of Community Involvement. It's updated in March 24, and basically it reinforces the need to involve children and young people meaningfully in the planning process, particularly in shaping play areas and public spaces that are fit for purpose. The NPPF also talks about the importance of community engagement. So paragraphs 131 and 132 sort of make it quite clear that effective engagement with communities throughout the process is important, and that design policies must reflect local aspirations, and children's insights are a vital part of that. This is the North Cambridge Design Code. It's part of the National Pathfinder Programme. It focuses on neighbourhoods with the greatest need, raising design standards and tackling inequality. Between 2024-2025, around 240 students, 250 students, and the families contributed to the code. Each student brought around 1 to 2 family members. So if you time that number by 2 to 3 times, the impact was quite significant. So over 180 students took part in this in the stage 2 workshop, and that's 1.5 days per school. The activities we design align with the national curriculum, covering biodiversity, design principles, careers, and hands-on design exercise. This ensures educational value as well as planning impact. So if we look at stage 1, just very briefly, just want to mention about the areas. So King's Hedges, Arbury, and West Chesterton are all in North Cambridge, and there are pockets of deprivation. So when people talk about Cambridge, people tend to think that it's quite salubrious, but that's not the case, because there are pockets of areas where income is a bit low and also needed regeneration. And therefore, our design code targeted those areas. As you can see, there are these 4 areas we wanted to focus on with the children, which are built environment, urban greening, road networks, and sustainability. The project is, we were appointed by Trophy Montero, who's the built environment manager, and also senior urban designer Tom Davis was a key part of the project. So we work with Maxine Ross as well on this from a design, from a youth engagement perspective. This is a very structured process because we want this to be replicable. So if you look at this 9-step process, from introduction and walkabouts to data collection, analysis, and celebration, it ensures that children's ideas are captured rigorously and incorporated into design code. So here are some lovely pictures showing some of the really wonderful moments we have with the children. At stage 1, we engage Grove School, so it's got one of the highest numbers of children needing free school meals, and also the children speak a lot of different languages. So we thought that was a really good school to work with. And it was really good to have Councillors Katie and Councillor Jenny Gothorpe-Wood to attend the workshop. They give us very strong support, and we received endorsement from them. One of the key research we did was to do with the drawings. So basically, we divided the children into 4 groups. Each group were responsible for one topic. So that's based on nature, buildings, play, and sustainability. And as you can see, children were really, really, really imaginative. They came up with some really good drawings, ideas, but also annotations. So we partnered with Anglian Ruskin University planning students. So they analysed the drawings for us. and here are the results. So it was really encouraging to see that children saw trees as the key priority for North Cambridge. This is closely followed by buildings, animals, cycle stands, and plants. So that was really, really interesting, because that's sort of aligned with the latest NPPF, which for the first time it talks about the importance of trees. And this is very much what the children are telling us. If we look at the triangles on the left-hand side, it sort of talks about the other key elements we found from the research, which are memorable buildings, environment, place feelings, nature and well-being, play, and active travel. And within these categories, we sort of looking at the priorities as well. Interestingly, if you look at memorable buildings, the local convenience store is a must-have, so we must keep that moving forward. That was really, really interesting. So after a year of doing that, we analysed the results. The public consultation carried on, and it was about applying the code. So the first code was refined, and now we needed to test it with another group of children. So here you can see we asked children to do the drawings, but this time it's based on the 5 principles. And then you can see my team, they're working really hard with the children. And as you can see from the key priorities sheet of the text, the bigger the text, the more important it is for them in terms of those elements. So here, just some highlights of the drawings to do with the nature category. Basically, they really want strong emphasis on new tree planting. In terms of walking and cycling, they really want to emphasize on danger and the need to increase safety for children, because they don't drive. So cycling is really important. In terms of play, they absolutely want more play equipment. Racing track was a hit. In terms of buildings, they want really colorful building, which was contrary to what the architects had in mind, maybe, because they were they quite like muted tones, so more colorful. That was interesting insight from the children. So the architect, Thomas Paula Edwards, which was they were really, really encouraged by the results, and we'll take that on board. Sustainability, solar panels, number 1, followed by trees, rainwater collection, and so forth. So that was not surprising, but they just had a lot of wonderful drawings to show us how they can incorporate it. So here are just some reflections. So what worked well? So a lot of people took part. We thought that was really successful, and the school opened doors to us because we are a trusted brand. The process works really well. It's really important to have a structured process so that we can hopefully repeat that in other future design codes for consistency in youth engagement results. We build further trust. The use of technology was fun. We did a digital quiz. Children feel valued. We achieved positive planning outcomes. It was approved at the Joint Planning Committee, first time with massive endorsement from councillors praising us for the really, really in-depth consultation. What can be done better? I think better resources. We realized that maybe we need more people to come along as our services are in greater demand. But also better awareness of the value of youth engagement for everyone. Having stronger focus on children's mental health and well-being, and this is why we deliberately use less digital and more traditional. We want the children to get out and explore the environment, but also as adults, we want to learn from them. So one of the best things to do that is by walking, side by side with the children and talk to them, and outdoor learning played a key role in our research. So this is the key takeaway for you all. It's a 9-step approach to youth engagement based on the Cambridge experience. That's applicable to design coding, master planning, but also your average DM projects. These are the key considerations. Early engagement is important. Structural approach to youth engagement, partnership working with developers, councillors, schools. Always have a project base with a name. So our aim is to get the design code approved through meaningful engagement. Also share the results, feedback at all levels, and no matter how little it is, always share the results with the school so they feel valued. It's not just a one-off, there's a long-term relationship. And finally, don't be shy, do your PR, celebrate success, and be a reflective practitioner. Thank you.
Great, that's great. Thank you so much, Bonnie, and thank you all of you for all your presentations. It's interesting to see that, as you, Bonnie, mentioned before, that we have projects that are based in the same kind of area and also coming from different organizations and professions. So in a way, they can all cross, and make collaborations. So I think one of the first questions I will start that I would like to start is, how can you see from your different perspectives how collaboration can work between your different disciplines? And for example, in the case, because the different projects work in different stages as well, so it's kind of at the beginning, start planning and starting designing, and then you have also the how to applying them, and in the end, like monitoring. So how can you see this collaboration between different stages of the project, and make sure that then there is a way of monitoring that it has been implemented and if it's work or not? So maybe, I don't know, I would invite James, if you want to start, as considering you have also the marmalade development as well. That is something that you've been maybe monitoring, and
thanks for that, Bonnie. That was really interesting, and we were kind of neighbours in projects at the time as well when a lot of that was taking place. I think Bonnie said at the end, it's kind of like, when do you start? And so it's amazing in Cambridge that actually, and similar in Anglesey, that these things are happening at an early stage. Speak definitely to the Cambridge example, that to know that a local authority has taken the step to spend resources on engaging children on a planning policy document is really quite something, and we've never kind of come across that before. And what we were trying to do on Hartree was kind of to do exactly that, basically, to step in as the private developer and to set up a kind of a checklist in our case for future development that comes forward, to mean that it was going to come forward in that way. So I guess it'd be a timing thing really in terms of how it could work together.
Yeah. Bonnie, do you have something, or play as well, if you want to add something?
I thought James just given a really good answer. But from my point of view, I think from a local planning authority perspective, having someone, like you say, Franca, to monitor the process or to oversee, that's really important. So naturally, I was thinking of the case officer. There's so many aspects particularly in a large planning application, that a case officer have to sort of have to focus on. So maybe it's about making sure that there's a steering group in place. So I think the usual people who goes to the pre-app meeting will be part of the key steering group, and then it's about collaboration, having a few people who are nominated to sort of look after the community engagement side of things. So it's really good that town's got that in place, but not all developers have the resources or knowledge to do that. So I think the project manager can play a role in that regard. Planning agent, we've worked with quite a few really good planning agents who can sort of do the coordination as well. Obviously, the case officer. In the UK, there are not that many local planning authorities that's got a dedicated youth engagement. I can count with my 5 fingers. So if you have a youth engagement team, that's really good. So I think part of the reasons for having today's webinar is to encourage other local planning authorities to consider dedicating some resources to have youth engagement. So hopefully they can see the benefits as well. It's about sort of accelerating growth.
Sorry, go on, Malcolm.
No, it's great. No, I think it's really good to see this, authority, private developer, and whatever we are, alongside each other, because I think that's it, and these things working together, and just really making the case, like, about advocating, and really that both of you are really like putting that right out there about making the case that the child-friendly approach is the most important. Like, from in a collaborative point of view, like we were a theatre company originally, and we're kind of brought in a sense of that kind of like about the animation and about like so many places not having that resource of really good youth services there, but sometimes just having some resources but being able to try different things in different ways and maybe disrupt the different ways to doing it. So being able to kind of come in and try out different creative practices and co-designing things, but then it's why often it's so great to work in academia, where we've then got that research and that evidence gathering, but whether that's coming from local authority as well, so that there's that all of those things kind of working together, but just all that like that really learning from each other, because that, like, you know, all three of us are going to talk in totally different ways about that, but having all of that and then sharing that and working with young people, filtering through that just becomes a really rich learning process, which cycles round and round and round. So
yeah, and I think you were also, Bonnie, and you were also making the point about, you know, when it turns to collaboration and when we are talking about the lack of, you know, maybe policies or frameworks talking about this, like the working that you are doing, guys, is something that, you know, it's something that you can update, and you can approach it just with different ways, in a more traditional or in a more digital way. The digital way can be quite easily to adapt to different environments, to different audiences as well. So I don't know if you have other experiences where you can tell us, you know, working with the same approach, but in another places, and where you can, and how you can see the methodology applied into other projects, or how it's received by local authorities or clients or developers or practices as well.
Well, the next stages for this, for us, is so we're going to be working in Cambridge, attached to the Cambridge room, and we're kind of, one of our co-founders are moving over to Cambridge, so we're kind of like, this is really nice to meet everybody here and sort of say hello properly. And then I'm working with Child Friendly Cities in Cardiff, so that's really looking at then a place where there's an impact thing to kind of create a case study and sort of look at how this particular methodology might be useful. And it's still part of a kind of academic research thing, that so it's both having an impact as well as developing that kind of evidence at the same time. But it's always about, and that filters through all of these, like, it was just such a pleasure to see both of those presentations, because it's always about being iterative. It's always about being child-centered or person-centered. And so you're always adapting to who you're working with and how and what the questions are, and just adapting in the room, and as well as adapting the whole framework and who they're with as well. So I think that all of these processes are about having a kind of skeleton approach to it, and then seeing what's the best way to do it in order to get the results, in order to really elevate the child's voice.
And I think it's amazing being particularly on this kind of long-term academic project. It was great to start from a base of trust in the kind of research process, and knowing that we obviously don't know what children are going to say or feel before we actually engage them. And, you know, sometimes in a consultation process, it can feel a bit like people want to know in advance and you can't possibly know. So it was really nice to kind of have a really open process to begin with. And then now we're getting into this kind of place where we can zone in a bit more on what we can do through the map.
Yeah, totally. So we have a few minutes left, but I would like also to ask you, because I think in the recent years we have been seeing a change in, you know, practices and the built environment engaging people and young, children and young people. So how do you see these engagement processes going forward, and how do you see your methodologies and, you know, approaches in the next few years, and what do you expect also from the system, hopefully, to change and to improve?
Shall I start? It's a good big question, isn't it? I think we were one of the things that's interesting about kind of what everyone's been talking about today is about, I think there's a couple of things to it. In planning applications, whether there's ever a mandatory requirement to engage with children. And because there's a mandatory requirement to engage the kind of general public, And that's not always the most successful in a drafty village hall somewhere when nobody wants to be there and everyone's kind of getting a bit aggressive. But if you're engaging with children, then yeah, as Nia's just said, people come up with different answers. And actually in development, often there are kind of it's always responding to the latest regulation and the requirements of something. So if certain cities, like in Cambridge, there was a kind of a decision to be like, no, you have to engage with young people as a part of your kind of preparation for a major planning application, then better people would definitely do it. And then all of a sudden, then you can go and approach people like Play Disrupt and Nia and Malcolm, who are the specialists in this area, to then go and engage with children in a way that's meaningful to them, which is something we were doing quite a lot of, working with Cambridge Curiosity and Imagination, so local organisations that know how to engage with children in a way that quite a lot of us don't necessarily know how to translate an environmental statement into something that can be understood by children and young people.
I think from my perspective, just to agree with what James just said, I think policy is really important. And in Greater Cambridge, we're quite fortunate that we have our updated Greater Cambridge Statement of Community Involvement, which requires developers to meaningfully engage children, young people in the planning process. I think next step is, I think in the validation list, normally you tick off the key documents you need for planning submission. I think we should have a stronger stance in terms of the requirement to have either in the design an access statement or the planning statement to require a chapter or page or a section that talks about how you have meaningfully engaged the children, young people. So from a policy stance, that's quite important. Then looking ahead with the local government reform, most councils will need to have a reorganization, restructure. So maybe that's an opportunity to look at how we can accelerate growth through better youth engagement. Because when I say youth engagement, it's actually community engagement, using children as a platform to reach out to the parents and grandparents. Like James say, sometimes planning consultations can be adversarial. Some people are against development, so it's hard to engage to the local communities when you want to deliver hundreds of thousands of homes next to an existing community. But if you talk about the long-term benefits to the younger generation, to next generation, I think that's quite a powerful way of making the case for sustainable growth. So to conclude, I think policy is important. Validation list, which is practical from a DM point of view. Looking ahead, the local government reform presents opportunities. So that's my bit.
Thanks so much. Nia and Malcolm, do you want to go ahead, or we listen to Tom Davies and maybe?
No, I was just going to say, let's hear what Tom's question was. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, that there are planning tools available to us to use to ensure that there is impact. I mean, recently at Greater Cambridgeshire Planning, we've been using long-term planning performance agreements, and sometimes they go on for a year and a half, and so there'll be future meetings in which you can see what the developers are proposing and have they incorporated the ideas, and as officers we can then check on that, and then they're also like, when the actual application comes in and a design and access statement is submitted, we can check at that stage that the ideas have been incorporated. And even at the high level of committee meetings, if we have council members that appreciate the agenda, they're also going to look out for this and link it up to what the children said in our reports. So yeah, we sort of found that as we've gone along, there are tools that we can use to check on things as we go along.
Right, thank you, Tom. Nia and Malcolm, yes, if you want to finish also with your.
Yeah, I'd love to share just on that, the question before and kind of what we hope for the future of all of this is, I suppose it would be, the big dream would be just that kind of having your say in how where you live is shaped is kind of, it's a kind of continuous process, and it's just a normal part of being a citizen, whether you're a child or an adult. We were saying how it would be amazing if everyone was kind of, you know, through public map or whatever it ends up being, kind of always sharing how they feel about where they live, where they're really used to that, and that's a normal part of life. And then we wouldn't need to necessarily go around and be asking everyone how they feel every time something's going to happen, because we actually all have access to that information, and that's all there, and it's all there in an accessible way that we can all understand, and it's actually fun to look at. And I think that would just be amazing for designing better places to live, but also for having more politically engaged citizens generally, you know, now and in the future. So I think that would be a big dream.
Yeah, totally agree with all that. Yes, Tom, you want to add something else?
I just left his hand up. Oh,
I think it's just an old hand, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I think that's yeah, to wrap up, I think that's okay. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and for the speakers to share their experiences. Please check out all of their websites and the work that they are doing, which is all amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for today. Yeah, and that's a wrap up for today. So have a nice evening, all. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Thanks. Bye.
It's just saying,
Thanks.
lovely, well accent, and thanks.
Right. All right. Toodaloo. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.